In this video, I'll be going through the 48 laws of power, and today I'll be covering law number 40, 41, and 42. Law number 40 says, despise the free lunch. Very few things in life are completely and entirely free. On the surface, some things may appear to be free, but the truth is there will usually be some strings attached. This same law applies if the price for something is much lower than you think it should be. If something sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. You should be very skeptical and very suspicious. I fell victim to this law when I bought my first car. I'm into cars, so I was desperate to start driving. I was shopping for cars way before I'd even passed my driving test. I'd managed to save £500, which is nowhere near enough for a car. And I vividly remember my dad trying to warn me. He said, if you buy that car for £500, you will end up having to spend much more than that. Of course, I ignored the advice and went ahead and purchased the car anyway. To this day, that remains the poorest financial decision I've ever made. After about a week, the engine started to make strange noises, which I obviously had to pay to repair. Once that was fixed, there was another issue with the suspension, which once again was another expense. On top of all this, the car needed outrageous amounts of engine oil. The car was such a financial burden that I remember having to sell my iPod at the time just to keep it running. In the end, that car ended up costing me 4 to 5 times what I'd paid for it. What I had thought had been a great deal had turned out to be a disaster. Another place I've seen this law is when I'm approached by people randomly in the street trying to sell me things. I was recently out walking and out of nowhere, someone approached me and told me that they liked the jacket I was wearing. And it was a nice jacket, so I stopped to say thank you. And then the guy pulled out a book and said, here, I want you to have this. I was smiling now, thinking that my day couldn't get any better. But the next thing that happened to me revealed the true nature of what was really taking place. The guy said to me, we work in the community to help people who are suffering and would appreciate a donation from you today. Unfortunately for him, I didn't have any cash with me. I thought I had escaped. But then, when I told him this, he said, no problem, we also accept card. I was well and truly cornered. So I paid, and I was so annoyed. How had I fallen for this? Don't get me wrong, I'm all for donating money to good causes and helping other people, but I hate being cornered into doing it. I like giving because I've decided to give, not because I've been coerced. It leaves me feeling very bitter. And in the end, I was annoyed at myself. I should have known better. I know about these laws, but I was caught slipping. I had taken the free lunch. I had been drawn in by the compliment about my jacket. Then I felt special for being offered a free book, not knowing that this was all a ploy to get me into donating. Despise the free lunch, my friends, before you are forced to despise it. This law applies for financial things, but it also applies for situations where people are being overly friendly to you. If you ever feel that someone is being too generous or too kind, then alarm bells should immediately start ringing. Many times people are trying to set you up to comply with the request. This isn't something that people always do intentionally. Many times it's instinctive, but the sad reality is people are the nicest version of themselves when they are trying to get something from you. The sooner you learn this, the better. By the way, one of the best ways to resist laws like this is to increase your self-discipline. I have written an ebook which gives you practical steps on how you can do this. I've used the tools myself and they have helped me massively. The link for the book is in the description and I'm giving away the first chapter for free. Law number 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. One of the most difficult things to do in life is to try and fill the shoes of someone who everyone admires, likes, and respects. People will naturally compare you to the person who came before you. The bare minimum for you will be to achieve at least the same level of excellence. If you are unable to maintain that, people will point the finger at you very quickly. And let's say you do manage to accomplish something great. People are likely to say, well, it's only because you inherited something which was already great anyway. It's a lose-lose situation. To avoid this, refrain from stepping into a great man's shoes. Unfortunately, there are some shoes in life that just need to be filled. There are some positions that cannot be vacant, otherwise certain groups or organizations would cease to function. The question is then, what do you do in this case? How do you go about avoiding stepping into a great man's shoes when a position needs to be filled? If you're about to step into a job which somebody has been doing for years, you should put your own signature and identity on it. Even if you're performing the same job and doing the same task, if you have made the job your own and you have imbued it with your own personality and your own style, then you are less likely to be compared to your legendary predecessor. The two of you will be so different that it will be like comparing apples and pears. The perfect example of this is in the film The Godfather, which is arguably the best film of all time. The Godfather, Vito Corleone, is a man who is respected, admired, and greatly feared.
My father's no different than any other powerful man.
He has built up the Corleone family completely from scratch. When he dies, his son Michael Corleone takes his place, and he has enormous shoes to fill. But Michael manages to excel in this role. He establishes his own name and his own identity. Vito was known for being a sociable and kind man who people could approach. Michael, however, was colder, more distant, and much less sociable. Vito was greatly respected, but Michael was greatly feared. Vito was graceful and had immense class, but Michael was blunt and ruthless.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again. Ever.
The point is, their way of doing things was completely different, which is why Michael still ended up being a great Don, despite being the successor to a legend. The next thing that you can do is to start a fresh project. By doing this, you place yourself where there is a vacuum. Because you started a fresh project, you avoid being in the shadow of the person who came before you, and you'll be seen as having succeeded on your own merits. A great example of this is in the Bible, where we are told of a king whose name was David. To this day, King David remains one of the greatest kings who's ever lived. During his time, he fought many wars, and he was extremely good at it. He began his military career by slaying Goliath, and after that he went on to conquer nation after nation. There is no record of him ever losing a war. The next in line to the throne was his son Solomon, who once again had enormous shoes to fill. His son rose to the challenge and is also known as one of the best kings. But why was he able to do this? The answer is he started a fresh project. Solomon didn't care about fighting wars. That's what his dad had done. Instead, Solomon focused on designing and building magnificent buildings. As far as architecture goes, he was far ahead of his time. He was building things that defied human imagination. The pinnacle of his building skills was when he built a temple for God, which we now know as Solomon's Temple. To this day, it remains one of the most amazing buildings ever built. Ideally, you will be able to live your life and not have to step into a great man's shoes. It's far from an easy task. Having to live up to a great reputation can put you under immense pressure, and it can make you feel as though you are constantly living in someone else's shadow. But if you must, if you really want to, make sure you do so by first establishing your own name and identity, and secondly, by beginning a fresh project. If you do these two things, you will avoid being compared to the person who came before you, and you'll be assessed on your own merits. Law number 42 says, strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Every group has a ringleader. It doesn't matter what type of group it is. It could be a group that has good intentions, or it could be a group of troublemakers. Whatever the case may be, that group will have a single person that has the most influence and calls the shots. Although this law says, strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter, the opposite is also true. Win the shepherd and the sheep will follow. One of the best uses of this law is when you're trying to get a group of people to do something. It will be extremely difficult if you approach people one by one. But if you can target a few prominent individuals, then other people will follow. There are several reasons for that. Firstly, very few people are willing to be the first person to do something. What if it doesn't work? What if it's a scam? What if there are strings attached? Very valid questions. But these questions make people very vigilant and very cautious, especially when they don't see anyone else doing it. I think like this sometimes. I only accepted the COVID vaccine after I had seen enough people take it and not perish. There was no way I was going to be the first person to take it. After I had seen that other people had taken the vaccine, and not just any people, prominent and important people, then I decided that I too would take the vaccine. Another use of this law is when you are dealing with troublemakers. If there are a group of people who are causing trouble, always complaining or never satisfied, there is normally one person who is the ringleader. If you want to restore peace and order, you need to find this person and get rid of them. But be very careful how you approach this. If the chief troublemaker is openly rebellious and it's clear to everyone that what they are doing is wrong, then yes, of course, go ahead and remove them swiftly and permanently. A great example of what I'm talking about is in the legendary sports film Coach Carter. Coach Ken Carter, acted by Samuel Jackson, is the new basketball coach of a team which is performing badly. When he arrives, pretty much no one takes him seriously. But there is one particular person who is taking things way too far.
Do you even know who I am?
From what I can see, a very confused and scared young man.
Scared of who? Scared of you?
His behavior is obnoxious. It's obscene. It's egregious. All the bad words. Eventually, Coach Carter gets rid of him.
Leave the gym right now.
For what?
And from this moment on, the team gets in line and begins to show respect. That's what to do if the troublemaker is openly rebellious. But what if the troublemaker is not openly rebellious? What if they are acting in a more subtle way? In this case, you can't just directly get rid of them, because if you do, people will think you are getting rid of someone for completely no reason. They will sympathize with the troublemaker, and you are the one who will appear to be the problem. In such situations, you first need to expose the troublemaker. Make it clear beyond reasonable doubt that this is a person not to have around. If you're lucky, this person will eventually expose themselves through their own actions. But sometimes you may have to engineer a scenario which will make this person show their true colors. It's only at this point when you can get rid of them. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. If you want to influence the whole group, don't waste time approaching individuals. Instead, approach those who are calling the shots. Once you win over the shot callers, you have won over the whole group. Likewise, feelings of discontent, ingratitude, and complaining almost always start from one person. From there, they spread gradually to the rest of the group like a cancer. To prevent this happening, sniff this out as early as possible and then silence the responsible person. That is law number 40, 41, and 42 from the 48 Laws of Power. Join me next week for the next 3 laws. If you enjoyed this video, I'm certain that you will enjoy my other videos on the 48 Laws of Power. You will find them in this playlist. See you in the next video. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can be notified every time I release a new video.